So Chad, once again, thank you so much for giving us your time and your energy in the development of this and investment of the Dads Cafe. I'm excited to hear, we haven't met, so I'm excited to hear your experience, hear your perspective, and kind of the way that the Dads Cafe has impacted you and those that you work with. So one of the questions I want to start off with was, how has hosting Dad Cafes impacted your life?
Okay, it's a couple of different perspectives on that. And I would always start in honor of this work as a dad. I'm a firm believer in the concept that every day, I learned this from my mentor, but every day we wake up as brand new parents of brand new children. So the things that we've learned, while quite a bit of it applies, as the world changes, as they change and grow, and how they interact in the world changes, it really is a circumstance where we've got to continue to evolve. So as a dad, the Dads Cafe has given an opportunity to participate in sharing with both providers and dads who may not have ever been in any other sessions or any other curriculum-based program, to open up that door to be able to interact in a peer-based learning environment. As somebody who's a provider, I will say, operating in the space of responsible fatherhood and promoting pro-social programs for dads, regardless of whether they're mandated to come through the program through some court involvement or whatever it may be. Those programs, and not just the ones that I've run, but the ones I participated in generally, are very prescriptive. They're very much prescriptive. There's an expected presentation that you have somebody who's leading from the point. Whether they have a curriculum, it's great when they have a curriculum, of course, but they're following these guidelines to try to convey these concepts, get dads to share and bring them to a certain point. So there's an expectation in those particular spaces. You've got some programs that are purely organic, where it's just led off of the charisma and the wisdom of the people in the room. They may or may not be evaluating, right? But all of these programs are prescriptive to a degree because they're guiding individuals to a particular point, and there's information that's being intentionally conveyed. The Dads Cafe is a bit different. It equalizes the playing field. So in the circumstances where dads are having those conversations, just from the way the icebreakers are set up, the way that they are introduced to it, and then, of course, made to move around. If you came with some guys that you're not going to be in that comfort zone very long unless you know everybody in the room. You're having these conversations in a format of equivalency, because even the provider has to take his hat off as a provider. He's got to communicate from the space of just being a dad if we're reinforcing these agreements that are made. The phrase comes to mind of one of course, leveling the playing field, but also meeting on the level with these dads. My experience has been in hosting cafes, and even when I participated in one, that when individuals come in that room not knowing what to expect, dads who've never been in programs are not always open and ready to share. We share in a few traditional places like the barbershop, in the circles where we may socialize, there may be some level of exchange of information. But in a formal setting where information can be shared, I think the cafe is one of the best equivalency tools to try to bring everybody, regardless of their socioeconomic demographic or their experiences. The questions are posed in a way, and the conversations evolve in a way that it brings out everybody's experiences, not just what worked well for you, but your experiences as a whole. And in sharing, even the provider who's a parent realizes, I don't have that much, I have a lot more in common with these other individuals who may not be doing the work I'm doing, but my work hat is not what's leading my ability to share in the conversation. And for the dads, it's welcoming because they have the opportunity to share as much as they would like to, without being forced or without being dictated to, or without an expectation of you to respond to this because you were trying to get to a point of completion or graduation or things of that nature. And I think the cafe is a great tool in that circumstance. I also would add that for us in operating programs, using a particular curriculum, the Dads Cafes have been both a great recruitment tool, as well as a tool to engage graduating dads as alumni at a later point without taking them through. And they can build on the knowledge base they already have if they've been through some type of program, whether it's ours or someone else's, but they can bring those conversations to the table when we talk about the protective factors and the ideas around them. No amount of experience allows one to be a greater level of participant, but it's one that can bring dads who participate in other programs out, and people who've never been in any programs can all be in the same room and have a very positive and generative experience with other dads.
Awesome. I love that. It's one of those things I'm like, I do cafes, but I love hearing other people talk about it because we all experience it so differently. And the culture, that was one thing that Guy brought up to me, was the culture, that happens within a dad's cafe is different. Like I go to foster parent cafes as a foster parent. So our culture is different than, parents who are coming, moms or dads or whatever. So I love hearing it. It's so fun.
I'm just thinking now of I've gone to a whole bunch of parent cafes, but now that we're rolling out the rebranded or Dad's Parent Cafe in a box, I'm excited to go to some of those. And I think it's kind of that time in my life where I think those conversations, even though I'm not a dad yet, hearing other people's experiences is something that I can just retain and bring into when I do become a father.
Absolutely.
To your point, Andrew, we've had men participate who were not fathers, but they may have been uncles, they may have been coaches, and the experiences outside of what happens specifically in their own quote unquote parenting relationship, there's some shared experiences around people who are positive influences in the lives of children with some level of consistency. There's still the ability for them to participate, add value, and leave with some value-based information based on the experiences of others. I guess in the space where someone is not a father, I wouldn't necessarily call it prevention work, but it's definitely preemptive work for consideration about what those experiences might look like.
I wish that those were things we knew about, my husband and I, because we became foster parents a couple of years ago, and we've had 14 kids over the last almost 5 years now. And he never was around children ever before we got our own. And I was like, man, I wish that he had experiences like this to have a community of his own, or to get education or get experience, or be like, dude, this is going to happen. Don't be surprised, And so I think that would have helped him a lot.
I commend you all for being a positive influence in the lives of that many children. We also do a great amount of work. When I came to Trinity with under the former CEO, Alexandra, who works with you guys now.
Oh, yeah.
She brought me in as a program officer to run a program for called Positive Paths. She wrote a white paper, and it ended up developing into a program for Positive Paths, which is a resource center for foster care alumni. That is how we endeavored to move into the space of, through that, to family finding, to responsible fatherhood, motherhood. And we found our ways to the parent cafes through that fatherhood work and through the work we had done with Casey before. This is how we found the cafes. I'll give you a piece of information that might be helpful to dad. So if, as dads, if we wake up as brand new dads or brand new kids, and you've had 14 over the space of 5 years, tell him to add the length of time the children have stayed with you end on end. And he's got that many years of parenting experience, not just the 5. If you've got one that stayed for a year and another one that stayed for a year, that's 2 years of differentiating experience. So he's slowly becoming an expert in his field, even though it's no pinnacle. We won't all have it all figured out, but that's something I use with my dads, even in the cafes, to remind them, to embolden them to know that even if you've got a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old, those separate experiences are 8 years of cumulative dad experience. And it applies for mom too. And we have to look at it that way to know that we're not going to come to an end of these years, hopefully, of adding experience, but each child's got to be parented differently.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. That's a good insight. I like that. I'm going to share that with him. My second question leads into, what inspired you during the development of revising the Dad's Deck?
One was the opportunity to work in that close capacity with Be Strong Families. Outside of our partnership, I admire the work that's been done, because it's so incredibly innovative to be in a space where, and this is just looking at an organization, right? I always give multi-tiered answers because I look at things from a lot of different perspectives. But being able to work closely with with Be Strong Families based on the work that has been done in the past. From what I understand and was educated to, the decks developed organically in the space of strengthening families. The way they developed was organic. So to be in the stages of rebranding a deck, right? Bringing that information into our now, because when the deck was developed, of course, it was, quite a few years ago, but it was definitely pre-COVID and a lot of experiences that has changed, one, the way we socialize, and two, the way we deliver services as providers. And it's a renewed opportunity because I think that the development of the deck, some of the recurring themes were how these questions fit into the now, considering our societal changes, what our societal norms have shifted to, the common conversations about equity and inclusion. Those are all things that needed to be brought into the space because who we entertain in the Dads Cafes, it's only expanding. As it becomes more popularized for men to be engaged in these positive social environments to provide peer-based education opportunities and moving into parent-led events. That's something that 10 to 15 years ago, at least in this locality, was not very common. That is becoming part of our common language. So to be a party to updating the deck and making sure it fits our now and is equipped to be the baseline for continued conversation in the next 7, 8, 9, 10 years was just an exciting experience. An opportunity to work with Guy Alexandra and other thought leaders that were involved in just giving ideas towards the deck. It was just an awesome opportunity to build and grow a network.
That's awesome. Good. Thank you for that feedback. So share about a time, because you, unlike most of us, we dip in, we train, and we leave, but you get to support this community on a more consistent basis. And so you get to know these people and train in and out and support in and out. And so I want a little bit of feedback from a community perspective. So how, share about a time when the Dads Cafe supported your community.
Okay, so we have been actively engaged in responsible fatherhood work for a number of years through different initiatives and iterations through the Life Center. We partnered with localities, with both Richmond City Social Services, Henrico County Department of Social Services, with the schools, with juvenile justice. We partnered with any number of local entities that send dads to us. And one of the first times we were able to use the Dads Cafe deck was after a cohort that I was facilitating. And I had several other facilitators working as a part of a local initiative who were facilitating their own groups using the Responsible Fatherhood Development Curriculum. Well, we moved into a space where it was all of this conversation about alumni. What about the alumni? When the dads finish, they got to come back through the same conversations because we're running perpetual groups. So we positioned to use the cafe as just that, what I spoke about before. It was an open invitation to dads who've already finished the program, an open invitation to the facilitators of the various fatherhood programs, even ones that don't use the same curriculum we use, and an open invitation to some new dads. So we had a cafe, and I think what was so awesome was you had providers, you had dads who had finished various programs, about 8 to 9 dads who had finished programs, and then you had another 10 dads who had never been in any programming. And those dads were people who were just, a couple showed up to be nosy, a couple showed up because they were coaches of local programs, so they were active and engaged dads that brought a few dads from their teams. And then, of course, again, you had people who were facilitators for various curriculum, and you had a couple of dads who had been through a program. So what happens is they had never been to a parent cafe, but in that Dads Cafe, in going through the initial icebreaker and going through leveling the playing field and then them having to switch tables, me watching from my perspective as a host and having, some of the cafe hosts had already been to Dad Cafe. Some of the table hosts, had already been to parent cafes before. 2 of them had. And so they had an idea about the perspective, but they hadn't seen the deck beforehand. So me being in my purse, just watching how the scene unfold, to watch those brand new dads be emboldened after the first round of questions. When you move to a new table and they're sitting with providers who always position themselves to have the conversation. I'm listening to what you're saying and I'm actively listening and I'm waiting because I've got some information to share. That was where I recognized how that playing field was just completely level. Because some of the dads formed relationships there who had not known each other. Some had never participated in the work. They became clicked up with guys who had been through the program. Some of them enrolled in other programs after that point. And it turned into a situation where from that original group, I've still got about 7 guys out of the total number that periodically say, hey, when are we going to have another one? When are we going to have another one? And we run the other perpetual family work, but COVID introduced a situation where we put it on hold. So we're talking about over the last 3 to 4 years, about 2 years since we've hosted a cafe, maybe 3. And we still got dads who are chomping at the bit to tell me, hey, let me know when, as soon as you schedule a date, let me know. And now that we've got these new decks, we're looking at resuming the work very soon.
I love that. That's fun. That's a good. I'm listening to, I'm in a football culture town as well. And so like, I'm like, what would a dad's deck do to change the dads on the team and the coach, like to just shift that way that people are showing up. I love that concept.
And that's been something that's been a great space for us in our fatherhood work and our parenting work, because what you see with, and this is just a testimony to our town, you see lots of moms bringing dads to AAU practices. You see lots of moms dropping off kids at practices during the week, but you see dads showing up at the games. You see dads getting incredibly incensed when the play calling is off. So for us to move into the space to work with the coaches, we started and work with the dads. We started in the space there of working with the youth through our rites of passage programs. And so the question for dads was, well, if you're doing rites of passage for the boys, aren't y'all doing fatherhood work too? We actually had that question for dads. So to recruit those dads into the culture of both our fatherhood programs and to the cafes was awesome, to the point where we plan to actually continue to engage these dads moving in normalcy. And we've developed some framework for this is what we offer teams. So when you got a team that has a constant static number of kids and a static number of dads, and you've got 3 different age groups playing for this one organization, how can we engage them to do some character building work with the youth, but also, hey, dad, come here, we got something for you on this particular day. And the cafe is going to be really exciting for them because all of them haven't been exposed, but we've done it with a few groups so far, and we've got a super positive response.
I love to hear that. I love to hear how we can take something. Transference is one of my favorite words in the English language. It's, taking something and we know that it works this way. And so if we just take that knowledge and apply it elsewhere, we know it can be successful, if done well. So
dads don't always know what they know until they're called to task, to have a conversation about it. How do we inventory our experiences? And dads don't often have pro-social environments to share their experiences openly where somebody wants to hear it. And so just that in environment in introducing people to let them know, hey, this is something that can embolden and enhance our culture as dads. This is something that gives us another opportunity to be intentional about sharing and growing together. And I think that's what makes it such an innovative tool to be used. The questions come to life through the conversations. The answers are what become most memorable in the experiences. So when they unpack at the end and we're moving through the harvest, that's where other people see the light bulbs that went off in the room beyond the people they had a chance to engage with. And it's just awesome. To have dads wanting to come back to talk to more dads is testimony to the power of the work.
Yeah. I love that. And and as a former athlete, I feel like when you already have this team mentality and you have this comfort zone of, I'm on this team and these are my people, bringing something like this is an easy transition. It's an easy way to engage something that they may have never stepped into, right? They're not going to push themselves. But if it's like, well, it's for the sake of the team, it's kind of sneaky, but I love that it's an asset that you can offer. That's a great concept. I love that. Thank you for opening my eyes to that. I do have one last question, and then anything else you'd like to share. But if you had 30 seconds to convince someone to attend a Dad's Cafe, what would you say?
Okay, so I've got to give a 15-second elevator speech, but I got 30 seconds to do it.
Right.
Wow. Okay. So let me collect my thoughts for a second before I hit the timer.
Okay.
You know, in our community, dads often go about their work of fatherhood in a way that is not often publicly appreciated, sometimes not privately appreciated. And most active dads do that work not looking for appreciation. And we do so without the support of our greater community.
Mhm.
What does dad say if he knew that there was an opportunity to share with like-minded individuals who have different experiences in an environment that's judgment-free, where it's open, trusting, you're encouraged to share, but what happens in the cafe stays in the cafe, almost like Vegas. How could that impact the power of your parenting, and what positive effect could that have on the lives of your kids? In our community, when we start in differentiated spaces in small towns, as our children get older, they come from elementary schools, then they go into a feeder middle school, then they go into a bigger high school. That 3 or 4 elementary schools may culminate in one high school experience. So a lot of times the children we're parenting are going to end up interacting with each other, whether they know each other at the younger stage or not. And when dads can be intentional about building the fabric of the community, in a place like the Parent Cafe, the Dads Parent Cafe really is a think tank, where we can be intentional about what we're doing to connect with other dads, what we're doing about knowing what's going on in the community, where otherwise in current endemic times, we're not being given opportunities, or there aren't massive opportunities for us to coalesce, for us to be able to meet and connect and grow. Parent Cafe and the Dads Cafe is a perfect opportunity to do so.
I love it.
It's way more than 30 seconds.
No, you good. You good. We squeezed it down. We held them on we shut the door on the elevator. We held the button. I love it. Is there anything else, Chad, that you just want to share with us from your experience, or anything you want to just put out there?
Again, I just have to say that the Dads Parent Cafe, men are often not fans of prescriptive ideas in parenting. There's not many fathers that actively look for support traditionally. And I think now in the age of social media, we are exposed to so much more globally about information around parenting. You've got fatherhood groups that have taken off on social media that connect people from around the globe. But this particular tool is one that can affect the very fabric of the community that you're in. Allow you to have different conversations with men you may have known for years, and then those that you don't, all around the common, a common thread for us wanting just to be better parents or better dads, or better equipped or more knowledgeable. So I'm very thankful to be involved in the rebranding of the work, and excited about the opportunity to reintroduce this tool in its new format to the dads that we work with. So we thank you guys for the work you do.